Hello, and welcome back to Living a Culture of Life podcast by Human Life International. I'm your host, Colleen, and today I have a great episode to share with you. Have you ever wanted to foster a culture of life at your parish, but you don't know where to start? Well, on today's episode, Father Shenan Boquet and I discuss this very issue. Father offers some great advice for both priests and for laity about ways to foster respect for life and family within their parish. I will say some of Father's advice really surprised me, but it had such wisdom, and I really enjoyed being able to talk about this topic with him, and I hope it's edifying for you as well. And just a reminder, if you like watching the video version of this podcast, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, X, and Rumble, so you can watch it on any of those platforms, and obviously the audio version is available on all audio platforms as well. As always, if you're listening on an audio platform, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on YouTube or Rumble, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you can get new episodes every Thursday. Without further ado, please welcome Father Boquet to Living a Culture of Life. Welcome back to the podcast, Father.
Colleen, always a great blessing to be back with you in the studio.
It's great to have you here, and I always love fitting in conversations with you in between your mission trips. So it's good to be here with you in person.
Oh, very good. Looking forward to the year.
Do you have any big mission trips coming up?
Well, I'm actually heading out to the Diocese of Honolulu for a program there, and also the March for Life where I'll be speaking, but also from there, Philippines and Indonesia. There's several trips into Africa for the first quarter. So it's going to be a busy year.
What mission trip are you looking forward to most this year?
Oh, I mean, I look forward to all of them, of course, because enjoying being in the field. But, you know, there are actually a few new territories that I have not been to that are at least there on the calendar now with all the different travel bans and different situations around the world. Whether or not they come to fruition, that's time will tell. But if those actually occur, it'll bring me, in a sense, not that I'm in competition with anyone, not but the idea is I'll reach a very pivotal, a point in my mission work here at HLI, 100 countries. Wow. And if that all were to happen, so it's remarkable. So we'll see if they occur.
Yeah, that's very exciting. You'll have to do like an episode once you hit your 100th country of like the different countries you've been to and your experiences. Right. That'll be a interesting conversation.
Yeah, so it'll be fun because so I'm looking forward in the sense when you ask me what I look forward to. Probably it's just in the new territories to meet new people that our mission team already is involved in. But for me to be with them in the field is something new. So that's exciting.
Are you able to share what those territories are?
So one of the countries would be Zambia. So but that's going to be in connection with a trip to Zimbabwe. But these are actually places that are on the travel ban. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds. Yeah. But also there's opportunity maybe for a trip to a mission to Sri Lanka, which I have not been to. And then I forget what the other country is that is off the top of my head, but it's another African country, not Brunei, because I'll be in Brunei again, but Burundi is the other that I have not been. So really the two are actually in Africa.
Interesting,
out of the three that I need.
Burundi is one of the EAC countries, I believe, that's affected by the EAC bill that we've talked about.
So this would be through Emil, traveling there for a program. Actually, it's where our Congress will be for, which we have every year. It moves around the English-speaking countries, and this is where it's tentatively set up for. So that's in August. So more than likely that one will be. Yeah. But again, anything can change between now and that month. So we have to wait to see what the Lord has in store.
Well, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing all about your trips when you get back from them. So.
Very good.
Well, today I wanted to do a little bit of a practical episode, and we talk about life issues on this show all the time. And I wanted to do an episode discussing like steps to form a pro-life parish for listeners, be they laity or priests who want to really start facilitating a culture of life at their parish, things that they can do. So can we just start? What are some characteristics of a pro-life parish? When you think of like a vibrant pro-life parish, what kind of things are you thinking of?
Well, probably the best way for me to explain is kind of using a diocesan structure, which I'm going to be more familiar with, not only as coming out of a diocesan structure in parish ministry as a pastor, but also working with dioceses around the world. So this is not something just unique to the United States. So when you consider how a diocese would approach on a larger scale, so basically like your Respect Life office, and it can be called many names. So, but under that umbrella you're now touching many areas that affect life.
Okay.
So whether that be focused directly on the family, and it could be a focus on our elderly, our sick. It could be a focus on those with special need or handicaps. It could be working with a segment of food for the poor, the idea of food banks or clothing banks. So there's many ways of which the diocese will look at things from a larger perspective, and then bring those ministries down and those outreaches down to the local levels in the parishes. And again, it depends where you are in a diocese. If you're in the city parish, your outreach will look different. If you're in a rural part of the community, well, it depends. It could look very different there as well. So I think that's important as anyone is looking at how to build a mindset. That's probably the best way. It's not so much a program. It's not an activity, but it's really a mindset that really is rooted. And I've always, in my ministry in diocesan life, and still now as a pro-life missionary, it's in the wheel of justice. I try to anchor it in the social teaching of the church. And that's where the mindset really grows. And I love what the bishops of the United States often speak of, and that is that we propose and have a perspective of a moral vision of the sacredness of human life. That shapes everything that we do. So that, to me, Colleen, is the starting point, is as a pastor, as a lay leader, or just people in general wanting to really grow a movement within their own community, is we have to really understand what is the mindset that we're trying to create. What is the moral view we're trying to advance? This helps a person to identify what are the local needs, what could be of help to the local parish, what might be very important to the community at large. Again, these are very important, and individual people in their communities, Colleen, will know what specific needs are there. So an example, just a brief example, would be when I was stationed in a city parish. Of course, you might have more transients. You might have more people, kind of moving into the community, moving out very quickly. Their needs are very different. Being out in the rural part of the diocese, well, it's very different. It was very much more community-oriented itself, focused. We didn't have very many people moving through the community as transients, or people that might have been more dealing with homelessness. So very different, outreach. So I think that's very important, is really getting a lay of the land. What does my parish look like? What does the community look like? What am I hearing from the community of some needs? Now, again, we can look at this from the parish in the sense of what can the parish do, but I like to look at it in the broader sense. How many nursing facilities may be in our community, caring for our elderly or our sick? How many places maybe we have shelters in the community that are sheltering people who are homeless? Do we have a clothing bank? Do we even have a food bank? These are things that, to me, when we're beginning to build a conversation, identify a need, identify where I am, and then what's already present, what's not present, and then what can our community of faith, what can we physically do? Just one example, to say, just this morning I was holding a conversation, with a technician that was here at HLI doing some work on our building, and they were talking about their work in Haiti, how they have a medical mission. Now, I've served on some of those, and I actually know people who are heavily engaged in medical missions around the world every year. So that's an example that is adopted by a parish, or it could be adopted by several parishes working together. So those are just kind of a few examples.
No, those are good. So when I think like culture of life, I'm thinking kind of our key topics here: abortion, contraception, IVF, education, and discussion about those, like either helping women in crisis or providing education for people. It sounds like you're saying the best way to start is to identify hands-on needs that might be outside of those more sensitive issues. What people need shelter, what people need food. Do you think that that's a good first place? Is what are some, in a sense, like non-controversial ways to start formulating this culture where people are looking out for the needs of others?
Well, as we know from our podcast and just my experience, is that formation is very important. And a lot of times, and you just mentioned that by knowing the community, especially, if you're a new pastor, a new associate pastor, and maybe as the associate you've been charged, working with specific areas, but you don't know the community, and you really have yet to come to know the people of God. And so it takes time also to know, where are they in their spiritual formation? Where are they in their understanding of the social doctrine of the church? Where are they in their understanding of moral principles? And it just, again, depends where you are assigned. And so you have to really listen. I always found that entry points are very important. And I always worked on those entry points that universally people connect to. So that would be feeding the poor, feeding the homeless, or bringing shelter to the homeless, clothing the naked. These kind of things are universal that allow people to connect. And then the formation, Colleen, that's something I always tried very strongly to do in my parish ministries, is catechesis and formation.
Okay.
Then with that formation and catechesis, evangelization becomes much clearer. And so evangelization here and outreach can be the corporal works of mercy, but evangelization is also bringing the good news, bringing to bear the good news. So I always found this to be the good points of entry. And then once people become interested and they become engaged, then you begin to start with the formation of introducing, well, why do we do this? So what are the gospel principles that are being, proposed by our Lord and that are carried forth by his church? What is it? And then from there, you begin then to address, and you can look at, and I have always been, found it very fruitful in that regard, because then people begin to ask you questions. Well, if that's the case, Father, then maybe we ought to be looking at, and this is where the other points. But let's just say that, Colleen, you're in a community where there already exists a pregnancy care center.
Yeah.
So the community may already be very much aware of it, not the larger maybe a community enough, but because it exists, you can now bring this in much more quickly.
Okay.
But if it doesn't exist, you have to really form people, educate people. If you don't have any, let's say, it depends again what state you're in the United States, particularly, what may be happening in your community. So if you don't have, which we do see in many parts of the global community, abortion is not legal. Euthanasia is not legal. The issues that we see with reproductive technologies may not be as readily available in those communities. So they're not dealing with that. But what we still need to do is bring people an understanding of what is happening so that they can be proactive. Maybe not to be reactive, but maybe proactive. So again, it depends on the community. So I think as a parish priest, especially after some time of learning the community, it's where you begin to see, where are those needs, and where do I need to, and I say this with respect, where do I need to push a button? In other words, where do I need to develop a deeper dive? And then how am I going to develop that? And for me, my experience has been both in parish ministry and in the global community, working with priests all over the world and working with bishops and dioceses and creating programs and structure, is the deeper dive doesn't have to be every topic. Let's start with one that may be pertinent to them in that community, and then build on it. And then you just build. Because once you start talking about, back to what I began with that moral perspective, that moral view, you can't help but start looking at all the other parts, because you can't just stay on one. You realize that the social teaching affects everything. And so, but that takes time, right? But if you're fortunate to be in a community that has already been developed very strongly and very active, strongly committed and very active, I mean, you just get on the wagon with them and you start going with them and you just build. That's a blessing. I mean, that's a real blessing. But that's not necessarily the experience of most priests in going into different parishes. It all depends on who you follow, and it also depends on the structure of the diocese. Has the bishop present or former bishop been very active in this regard? And if so, then you will see the fruit of that in the various activities, events, programs, and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting comparing just like the parish here in Front Royal versus like parishes in New England, the difference in how dynamic they are and just kind of the general baseline understanding. So that makes sense that you're going to have to kind of formulate whatever you're doing to the actual parish that you're in and the needs and the knowledge of that parish. I also really like what you were saying about entry points of like what things can most people rally around, and using that to kind of form the relationship. It seems like and kind of start those conversations, start asking some questions or start bringing up topics, because there's that whole idea of like rules without relationship breeds rebellion. And I could see if a priest came in and all of a sudden started saying like, no to this, no to that, no to this, no to that.
Right.
And people might feel like it's all no's and they wouldn't fully understand
Right.
it. So being able, and obviously the priest needs to preach the truth. I'm not saying he shouldn't do that.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
like being able to build that relationship. Okay, let's start our conversation of human dignity around why it's important to feed the poor.
What I would also add to this is a technique that I used is once you identify the leaders of your parish. So, obviously you're going to have your parish council. You might have, even within the schools, if you're in those school systems, you might have your boards and so forth. Well, this might be your entry point, by working specifically with them and taking time, to work with them. One thing that, I try to do, and we do this in the global field, is begin to introduce documents. So what we often would do is pick a document, and we're going to take 15 minutes out of our meeting to study. And again, you pick something that, again, once you've learned, what's the kind of the general understanding of your community, including your leaders. Don't assume because they're in a leadership role that they understand. So you might pick something, and begin to say, okay, look, every meeting, not only will we begin with a prayer, but I want to begin with a little short reflection on, maybe it's a recent comment of Pope Leo. Maybe Pope Leo has been very strong of late, speaking specifically about the family. So maybe then you start studying, what does the church teach about the family?
Yeah.
Well, because if the Holy Father is saying this is going to be something of focus for him, that means the universal church is going to be focusing on this. So it would be in my interest on the parish level, diocesan level, what are we doing to address the topic? So there's many ways to do that. So that's, and again, I just did this recently in Malaysia for our international congress there, working with local leaders, and which I'll be returning to now this year, actually maybe twice this year, is to help them build on their programs that they already have and their formation. But again, beginning to give them an actual plan of action.
Yeah.
So I left them with a library of things I believed that it would be important for them to study before they do anything else. Any strategic planning, any strategic development, is the first year is identify your leadership team. And I gave them a list of 10 documents I felt were important for them to know. And to become familiar with. And then I led them to our website where we do discuss all these documents, and so that they begin to learn. And once that leadership team is familiar enough that you can send them out for an elevator conversation where they can begin to articulate what the church teaches, not just quoting paragraphs, right? But what it teaches, now they're prepared. You can develop on that. So it does take time.
What happens if the parish priests or the parish leaders are facing kind of an apathy among the people of the parish who they don't really care to be involved? They come to church on Sunday, and that's that, and maybe a check in the collection box is the extent of their involvement in the parish. What can you do in that situation?
So again, it's teaching because, and it's preaching. And so I'll return to Pope Francis here because I've referenced it many times, and I do find it a very valuable reflection. It is the Good Samaritan. Because what Pope Francis addressed in his reflection on it, and he spoke about this in numerous times, but in many different ways, but one that I connected to was that the Samaritan was there for the good of the person in need, and the person in need was there for the good of the Samaritan. Yeah. They both had something to give, both had something in need, one maybe greater in a hierarchy of need, right? But the idea was, but both had a need and both had something to give. And it's important that this is what preaching does. It unmasks the reading. It brings it to the current moment. It's a living word. So what does that living word teach? So this is why as priest, preaching and teaching is so integral to development of our parish mindset. Yeah. And we set that stage by the way that we preach, by the way that we teach, what we present as a value to the parish. And again, that's part of a good pastor, but you don't come out with the whole wagon right out the gate. Learning, listening, knowing what's happening, and you begin to build on that. And so that's one way. So the preaching now, but when the people of God may not be developed for whatever reason, and that's not casting a blame or disparaging any situation, but you realize you've inherited something of great difficulty. And it may be overwhelming, and you may be getting pushback. So maybe you have tried, and you're getting this pushback. Maybe even the DRE has been trying and getting pushback. Maybe the director of adult formation is getting pushback. So it doesn't just mean the parish priest is getting pushback. It could be a lot of people that are trying, finding ways, but they're not getting any traction. So that means, again, stepping back and realizing, why are we not getting traction? Maybe it could be the way I am preaching. That could be. It could be that maybe I need to look at how I'm conveying that message. But it also could be is that they're not prepared, that what we're offering to them is falling on a deaf ear, or maybe a non-sensitive ear, because it has not heard this before, or not in enough detail before. Or it could be that maybe they were taught something different. Let's be honest, we know that we have dissent, and so there could be those dynamics. So that's why what I began with is listening, observing, and as you said, it doesn't mean I don't preach. Right? But it means I have to know my community, love the community. And I would say the same thing, and as it is for a bishop, because he's speaking obviously to a larger community. He has a little more ease of inroad because of who he is, and obviously the charism of the bishop is unique and very beautiful as a shepherd of the universe, of the church in that community. So yes, he can approach things from a very different angle, but at the same time, he may inherit a diocese that might be might be young, so he's got all those same dynamics on different levels. So it really is about listening. And what I would say, and I know we'll get this in a little bit, is how do we then maybe look at, as a parish priest, how do I, again, engage? I like small faith-based communities. I like the model.
Yeah.
And that is, how do you create leaders in the community, in that small base community, and you empowering them to then be the catechist and the evangelizers and the point people in those communities. And so now you're stretching your outreach and your network.
Can you explain for our audience what the small faith-based community is?
So there are many ways of approach on it.
Okay.
This has always been how I've approached, and actually based upon what I'm seeing in the mission field, because I see different models. But the base of this is how, I'm just going to use a diocese, parish. Let's say that your parish is, you have 5,000 families. All right. So you're talking about a very sizable parish community.
Yeah.
And let's just say that it's only 2 priests that are serving that community. Well, realistically, we know that Father, the priest there, can only do so much. So how do we, as the laity, have a role? We all have a role and responsibility. So that to me would be my first teaching point. What is the role of the laity? What does the church teach about this? What did John Paul and Christa Fidelis laity what is the role of the laity? What does the Second Vatican Council say? And that's about empowerment now. We're about not just empowering power, but we actually are empowering people to live out their vocation, to live out their charisms, to live out their baptismal commitments, and the responsibility we all have said to Christ in saying yes to him, right? And so this is the starting ground. So the small base community is identifying leaders who are willing to step into that role, then empowering them with understanding, with the tools that they need, right? Spiritual formation, catechetical formation, and teaching them what evangelization looks like. And they also know their community. So you know your neighbors, and what you're doing, you're building within a small community, a relationship of network, people you may already know, neighbors down the street, kids that you already know are playing with your children, and you begin to build opportunity to engage them, inviting them to your home, or maybe taking turns in each person's home. And it could be centered around praying together. Something, and I use the word simple, not because the rosary is simple, but simply coming together to recite the rosary and pray the rosary together as families of this community. That may be the starting ground.
Yeah.
It could be where they come together, and maybe the parish pastor has identified, using Pope Leo's comments, certain little letters the Holy Father has written. I would like these to be 2026's reflection. Here are 12 of them. I'd like you to meet once a month. So a lot of different ways of approach. But those small base communities is where you really are empowering that community to take on responsibility for their neighbor. Subsidiarity.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So if there's a neighbor in need, they're the ones that reach out.
Mhm.
If there's someone sick in their community, an elderly person within that, they're the ones that are reaching out.
Mhm.
So in other words, they're the ones exercising and conferring, this beautiful expression of the gospel.
Yeah.
And obviously in relationship with the parish pastor, the shepherd of the local parish, and, in harmony, not this one's doing their own things, but working in harmony, because then they can begin to be a link between this community with their shepherd.
Mhm.
Again, trying to shepherd 5,000 families, but Mrs. Smith is sick. Father, it might be good if you come by for a visit.
Mhm.
He may not have heard that unless a
Yeah.
family member called. But now the small base community knows each other. They're caring for each other. They're responding to each other, and they're
Mhm.
helping each other. Well,
Yeah.
there's a linkage that's
Mhm.
very, very beautiful. So can be the model. That's the model I use
Mhm.
when I talk about building a culture of life model
Okay.
on a diocesan level, on a parish level, a
Mhm.
university level. The model can be applied on so many fronts.
Yeah. And that also probably allows to take, I don't say take advantage of, but take advantage of other people, different people's talents.
Mhm.
You can have people in that small group who some person might be better at the evangelization. Someone else might
That's
be
correct.
better at meeting people emotionally where they're at. Let me just sit with you and comfort you as you grieve or
That's
something like
right.
that. So you are able to have everybody's talents and
Right.
personalities shine in their sphere.
Well, if I may, we all come from parish families.
Mhm.
Whether we are born into this beautiful Catholic faith or we've come to the faith through conversion and
Mhm.
so forth. But we all come from a community.
Yeah.
But you always go. I mean, it's the same point as you. But let's say, Colleen, you and your husband only go 99% of the time to the 7 a.m. mass. You don't know the community at the 10 a.m. mass.
Nope.
And the 10 a.m. mass does not know the community at the 7. That's one of the challenges of a
Mhm.
pastor
Yeah.
is how do you take 5 different communities
Mhm.
coming to worship on a given Sunday,
Yeah.
but never see each other? And so this is an example of how you connect people,
Mhm.
because now you build on their talents, their skills, their insights, but also you're teaching them the social doctrine principles.
Mhm.
You're teaching them stewardship. You're teaching them the principle of solidarity, right?
Yeah.
And as we know in a family, that's your first link.
Mhm.
That's the first hierarchy of value, is caring for your family.
Mhm.
I know as a gospel, everyone's part of my family,
Mhm.
right? And I have an obligation to love and to serve and to care for all of God's people. We know that.
Mhm.
But that first foot, if you will, is with those that I'm closest to.
Mhm.
So in that small-based community, faith-based community, which you're also building is solidarity.
Mhm.
You're with each other.
Yeah.
And you're building that linkage, and then you're building stewardship, and you're building subsidiarity, and then you're building an option for the poor. You're building, rights and duties, and then you're building on, the beautiful other principles of responsibility and participation and community. So all this becomes bare, and it all hinges on human dignity.
Yeah.
All of it. So this is a beautiful model
Mhm.
that really can help foster a culture of life within a parish.
Do you think there's a danger in that kind of model for there becoming this kind of hierarchy within parishioners where people feel like this small base community is the elite group of the parish and they're the ones with the relationship with the
Right.
parish priest, and having some parishioners feel like outsiders? Do you think there's a danger of that? Or do you how would you overcome that if you run into it?
Human nature is human nature, and human weakness always reveals itself.
Mhm.
But this is again where the shepherd of the parish, the
Mhm.
pastor, along with his the priest in the parish, the others in leadership role, religious, and obviously our diocesan bishop, always reminding us of the temptation to lord authority over, which
Mhm.
is never the value of the gospel. So,
Yeah.
but that's where teaching comes in, and always
Okay.
preaching, and also again, how do you, what I've never cared for in parish ministry where there became a competitive spirit.
Mhm.
There is a time and a place to have competition and so forth, but not in this idea that. In other words, we don't put one faith-based community up
Mhm.
against another faith-based community.
Yeah.
What we do is we begin to put linkage between them.
Mhm.
Because as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
let's just say that you have as the bishops have been promoting, very beautifully responding to women in need and their children.
Yeah.
So how do we accompany women in need? And then we can talk about many other examples of people in need. So, but this small faith-based community is over here on the fringe, nowhere near a city. They're not dealing with some of the issues that this faith-based community is closer to the city, and they're dealing with something different. But what we do in small, at least what I did, and what I promote in the mission field, is because now mission field is a little different, because you might be talking many kilometers distance between these communities. So that's a little different. But in a diocesan structure, right, usually the parishes are closer to each other. So what you could do is, whereas this parish over here is, again, doesn't have a pregnancy care center, maybe doesn't have a food bank, because there may not be a need. That's questionable, but may not be a need.
Yeah.
But over here there is. So you link them. So now they're working together. They're helping each other. So as you said, their skills, their gifts, their abilities all come. And so it's very important not to make them to isolate them and make them kind of individual, but to show, again, solidarity, that we are all part of this together. So those principles are really what govern.
Yeah.
And when something gets out of hand, you come back to the principle, right? And so this is this can be easily done on not only from the top down, but from the bottom up. Yeah. So the idea is that you can have a small faith-based community that decides we want to become more knowledgeable of what the church teaches on the dignity of human life. So it doesn't have to come from the pastor. It doesn't have to come from above, right? It doesn't, nor is it in competition. Right? But so they determine what that need may be. And it may be that the local leaders realize there's a great need in our community, but people just are not ready for it. So they take it on and begin to work with their peers. And hey, Frank, Betty, would you come with me next week to, maybe the kids can come and join our kids? We do a food gathering over for the food bank. Oh, I didn't know there was a food bank. So it's a way to educate. You're forming people. And as then coming back, and then I'll toss it back, and that is what you said on the more, which you call them the more touchy, more sensitive issues. But that's the way you find inroad, because many of the people that I meet throughout the Western world, that are standing outside of facilities where abortions are being performed, or maybe doing marches and so forth. The majority of people you meet, that's not where they started. Some did. That was their entry point. Yeah. But many people started on other levels and were introduced and realized, I need to do more. Yeah. I need to do something more.
Going back to what you were saying about having different groups and the importance of linkages, one thing that also occurred to me as you were talking about that is how that helps keep burnout from happening. So when I was trying to look into some of the challenges faced by people who want to form pro-life cultures at their parish and some of the challenges that they run into, one thing that came up was just burnout of trying to do everything, where you're handling the abortion issues, trying to help families in crisis, also trying to run a food bank, also trying to provide shelter for the homeless, and kind of minister to every single need. And that's just really easy to burn out, and you end up with not one focus, and then you don't do anything as well as you could. But having different groups that have different focuses that are then all linked together, and there's going to be overlap in who's volunteering for what, but kind of having set groups that all work together and are linked and aren't isolated, but also have specific focuses seems like the most effective way to be able to minister to those needs.
And also within your leadership team, you also can subdivide, the various bioethical questions or issues. And again, it depends on your community. I mean, it really does. And so at the same time, because those principles, and we are part of in solidarity with everyone. So even in a community like in Africa that may not be dealing with abortion, may not be dealing with legalized abortion. So they may not see the importance of, well, why do I need to do 40 days? We don't have anything here. Why would I need to have a pregnancy care center? We really don't have. So, but they're looking at it from one perspective. So the goal of any leader is to help them to see that solidarity also means solidarity with someone that's not in my community. So it's teaching the larger issues as well, because it does affect. We are part of the family of God. So whatever happens to my brother or sister happens to me. One of my presentations I love to give, because that helps anchor that, yes, I should be concerned what happens in Africa.
Yeah.
Yes, I should be concerned what happens right down my street. Yes, I should be concerned. And so these are ways of formation. And what you just said also is that we can't do everything. So this is what I also love about the model of our church, and that is she also empowers people in the skills and the passions they have to work in the areas that really attract them. The challenge is the church teaches a hierarchy of moral value.
Yeah.
And so that as we look at the moral issues, what we would say also in our mission, the bioethical issues of life that affect human life, we know that the greatest assault on human life is the assault in the womb. So the abortion issue, right? So, so it's important as we tag someone, to be responsible for forming people in our community on that one issue, that we don't, again, isolate that issue, but always making sure it's connected to the other issues, and at the same time reminding people there are a hierarchy of issues, and how do we address them? So this is why, again, formation, education, catechesis, and an example, witnessing is going to be so important. And that's where, again, our parish priest really is as a shepherd, really sets that tone. And he sets that messaging, and whether it be in his preaching or in the various ways that he's established catechesis, as a whole in the parish. And that also helps without the burnout. Yeah. All right? Because then you're not tagging one person.
You were saying that lay leaders can sometimes identify needs and start kind of taking initiative to address those needs. What advice do you have for listeners who may be at a parish where there isn't a lot of pro-life activity, and maybe their priest is trying to juggle 3 parishes, or like not necessarily that he's hostile to pro-life things, but more that he might be too busy or hasn't started something, or he doesn't know where to start, and they really want to bring something to their parish. What advice would you have for people in that situation?
Sure. I would use the mission field as my teaching tool here, because when I get into the very rural parts of the global community, the parish priest may only see them once a month. So, and I don't mean this disrespectfully. So they're not necessarily looking toward Father to organize and to construct some type of structure, as much as Father looking to the local leaders that he now has been working with and collaborating with, identifying, helping form all the various things. We call them catechists, right? Yeah. In the rural communities, anywhere around the world in our church, but especially in the global community, you'll see this much more pronounced, because Father is the only priest working in a 200-kilometer square kilometer community. I mean, that's here in the States, we have a hard time understanding that, but that's the reality. So the local community begins to say, we want to start studying. We want to, bring in to our community a certain outreach. An example would be just education. Catholic education. We take it for granted that all of our parishes and dioceses, but that's not the case. So here in many other parts of the world, so this is an example again where lay faithful taking on their role and responsibilities and duties and obligations, not to say they, but us, all of us have our duties and obligations, saying we would like to build something in this community. And that's how things really start. I mean, when you think about a pregnancy care center, that didn't start with someone from above. Yeah. That came from below. That came from local people looking at a great need, and it started at a very simple entry point. And that's how many of our ministries really start, right? Yeah. I mean, most of the ones I've encountered, as a young boy growing, was an entry point. It was people bringing me and introducing me to something that was beginning in the community, and that's what nurtures the larger perspective, So when you realize that building a handicap ramp for someone disabled is part of a culture of life, sitting with someone whose child is handicapped so that they can go to the grocery store or they can go to the doctor themselves. that's part of a culture of life.
Yeah.
Helping a young mother that might be, has welcomed 2 young children, she and her husband, and she's kind of at a loss, and you go and help her. That's culture of life.
Yeah.
Culture of life is such a beautiful, broad, a way of approachment. But those are those local entry points.
Mm-hmm.
An elderly person that can no longer cook, and you bring them food.
Yeah.
Once in a while. Someone dies in the community, like a small faith-based community, and everyone comes together and they cook for the family for the first week after the death. They may hear of someone whose child has been ill and they don't have the resource they need. Community comes together. Whatever that is, that's culture of life.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting too, because I think sometimes it's very easy to get distracted by the big threats to life and family and dignity, which exist in our world, which obviously we know about and are concerned about. That's what we talk about in this podcast all the time.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's very easy to let slide, maybe I should sign up for this meal train for this person. Like, it's really easy to say, I don't have the time, I'm too busy, or not realize how important that is.
Right.
And yeah, I like that you were bringing that up, because at first I was like, these are such small things. How is this like fighting the like pro-abortion culture? And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, no, those are like the things that's super easy to overlook, that are really easy entry points.
Well, it's I think I mentioned this recently in one of our previous podcasts. It's a picture that I saw not long ago where, when you want to change the culture around you, transform, where does all that start? And the picture showed a dining room table.
Yeah.
With mom, dad, and the kids. That's where it starts. So these entry points, and what some might call small. I don't call them small, but the idea is that I might say the word small, little things. But the idea that don't mean that they're little or small in any way. They are all significant because they're all ways of teaching. Yeah. And when children see this and realize that in their parents, what their parents are doing, why are we doing this? Who are these cookies for? When I was a younger boy, digging up potatoes and having to bring it to someone else. Why am I doing this? And usually getting smacked on the head and saying the reason why you're doing this is because I told you to do it. But you realize as you grow and you mature, well, that's what they were trying to teach me. They were teaching me values. I mean, being aware of others, being sensitive to others. This is how you transform the culture. Yeah. This is how we get out from under the darkness of the culture of death that is usury, exploitation, manipulation, and death. That's all it promotes. So how do you get out from underneath it is by bringing light into it and scattering the darkness, getting rid of the darkness. And we know what is the darkness. And many times what leads many of our sisters to consider abortion is fear. Fear of being alone, maybe being alone. So this is, again, those entry points. The elderly. Why would someone consider their life to be unvaluable? Because they think they're burdensome, because they're alone. And so at the end of life, or when they face a terminal illness, but when you have people coming and knocking on your door, ringing your doorbell, coming to visit you, sitting down with you, having a cup of tea with you, these are ways of showing that you still have value. There's love. We love you. We care for you. We enjoy you. These are things that are ways of, and the same thing happens when you bring food to someone that and you don't realize. I've never been in a position to be starving, hungry. I've not been in a position to wonder, where's my next meal? I've not ever been in that situation, but many people are. And you come along and you give them something that is a life and death issue. Yeah. All right. You bring them clean water. I mean, there's so many ways. So this is why that's why I go back to what I said earlier, is that faith-based community, that model, I have a great love of it because I've seen it, I've worked in it, I've seen its fruitfulness, and I've seen how its mindset can be very good, not only for the local community, but for the regional, right? And then on a diocesan level, and you can see how dioceses working together, for a common good. Which is one of our social doctrine principles, right? And it's one of our very important principles, the common good. Yeah. And so that's why, and from myself, yes, the topics that HLI deals with are always front and center because it's what we deal with in our mission focus. And how that begins to be part of our teaching, part of our catechesis, part of the reason why we exist. right? But in the mission field, and that mission field is the U.S., right? North America, South America, Central America, the Caribbean, it's everywhere.
Antarctica. No.
Right. Wouldn't mind going. But the understanding is, how do we help people to see that?
Yeah.
And so it's not an either or, all right? It's a both and. It's a both and. But really, if I'm a lay person, whether I am a priest or a consecrated religious, we all have a responsibility.
Yeah.
And what you said, and I just want to pick it up and just kind of rephrase it with you, and that is, this work, this ministry, this service, this mindset doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to all of us. Christ has called us into the vineyard, right? And all of us are being sent into that vineyard. And sometimes it's on the Lake of Gennesaret in a storm, and sometimes it's a calmness, right? But the idea, we're all sent. And each of us has to respond to that gospel and be able to say, and really to pick up the words, that Samuel would say to Eli, that he was hearing. Here I am, you called me. And obviously, as Eli would tell Samuel, it is the Lord. So this is how you are to respond. Here I am. So that's why it's not for the bishop to do. We expect those in different roles and obligations, and especially our shepherds. There's a as the scripture says, to the one that much is given to, Colleen, much more is expected. So yes, we do hold them to help us in this regard. At the same time, the people of God, which I am a part of the people of God, right? We all have a responsibility. So this is why I'm glad we're talking about this, because it shows that each of us has a responsibility. And so what I want to encourage those who are listening, right? Because that's the first people I get a chance to impact. And it's just a question, respectful question. What are you doing? How are you, as an individual, as a family, whatever role, whatever age you are, how are you influencing the community around you? So what am I doing? That's the first question that we all have to answer.
Yeah.
And that's how many people have gotten involved in this great culture of life movement, because someone prompted them to ask that question.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Right? And as I learned in parish ministry, many of those at a certain age, no, I couldn't expect them to be on foot, no, but they still had something to give. And so we'd ask them to do something they could do.
Yeah.
And that's why it's about that small faith base, because guess what? That neighbor knows what Miss So-and-so can do, knows what Mr. So-and-so can do. 5,000 families, I'm still trying to figure out what are the names of all these families, right? So think of the bishop on a higher level. He's not going to, again, those principles that guide us and shape us are there to help us.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, is why it's important to have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
And to encourage people. Don't be afraid. Start where you can, build where you can, grow, and it'll mature into something quite lovely if you give it a chance.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I like how practical and simple, again, not little, but just kind of easy entrance a lot of these ideas are. It's not something that's like, go start X, Y, or Z ministry, although you might be called to that. But also just, like you were saying, go bring a meal to someone, just showing up for people and looking at what are my abilities, my gifts, my talents, my time capacity right now, and how can I give of myself and contribute to the parish life.
Exactly. And last thing I would say is in the sense of education, formation, catechesis, right? So let's kind of be clear, as we talk about evangelization, that means to witness, to give witness, all right?
Okay.
Catechesis, formation, education is just that. You're catechizing, you're teaching, you're exposing someone to a teaching and explaining and unpacking it so that they can better understand, which influences, obviously, my ability to evangelize, all right?
Yeah.
If I don't know the Word of God, how can I speak about the Word of God? If I don't know what the church teaches, how can I teach others about it? At the same time, evangelization is my personal witness. What I say is what I do is what I say, and so forth and so on. So these are very important in this.
Yeah.
And so study is very important. And what and this is a global, and I use the word problem, but as I see it as a challenge, most people are not familiar with what the church teaches.
Well, you were going right into my next question.
Okay, sorry.
No, that was basically like, what happens if you are either a priest who's listening or a lay leader who sees their parish, they have their relationships, they're building those, they're involved in like the different ministries that exist, and they see a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding about the church's teachings on something like contraception or IVF
Correct.
or even abortion, though that's talked about more than contraception is. And they want to start educating, catechizing people that way, but they don't want to either put up barriers or walls with people who might not agree with them. Like either come across as political or just alienate someone from the parish.
Right.
Or they just don't really know where to start. What advice do you have for people in that situation?
So this is where, again, introducing people to the documents, to the teachings of the church.
Yeah.
And again, for myself, it was being creative. So an example of that would be during Lent, which we were preparing for, and and that would be is maybe picking a topic that you're going to talk about on every Wednesday evening. So that's what I would do. Every Wednesday evening in the parishes was basically a time for me to give spiritual direction. And I would choose a particular book, I'd choose a particular document, whatever it was going to be, and this is what we're going to study for the next 6 weeks. And so placed it within the context of Mass. Following Holy Mass was Eucharistic adoration. In the moment of adoration, the reflection happened. And then give them 20, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And people and why it could be longer, because they're there. They want to be there. They've chosen to be there. So this is the time. And whoever comes, that's your moment. And you build on that. And that's an example. You could do that in Advent. You can do it, obviously, I did it throughout the year, you know, but I picked special moments that connected to people in their mind. I have to do something for Lent, or I have to sacrifice something, whatever it may be, but you use that, right? Well, maybe your sacrifice is putting up with me every Wednesday night for an hour and a half. Maybe that's your penance. Come and listen to me. But it was a way I found it allowed doors to open, because now you've introduced people, to various learning opportunities. And it bore great fruit for me. I had a great response because of that, and people became more engaged because of it. Then you can gradually, I was able to get into the more difficult so-called topics, broaden people's understanding, and make them understand why the church teaches what she does in this regard, whether it be on the dignity of human life or whether it be on the service of that dignity. Why? Yeah. Right? And why? So this is very important. And so formation, catechesis, education is irreplaceable. Yeah. Right? And to stretch people's hearts and minds. Some priests, which I do like as well, and each priest is different in how they might do this, where they might choose their homilies for Lent. Some people argue against this. I'm not either way, but I know this has happened where they actually have chosen a particular, I don't like that word theme either, but I'm going to use it, but a particular message, a particular theme that they want to carry all the way through Lent. And so every Sunday, that's what they're going to preach. Yeah. They're going to carry it in, using the readings, using the scripture to stretch it. That's another way. So it's, again, you have to know your parish. You have to know your community. And so that's how you help them.
Did you find as a priest that there was a challenge with adult catechesis for like cradle Catholics? Because that's something that I've thought about sometimes is when people are coming into the church as adults, they're going through the OCIA or RCIA, whatever the term is now, and studying what the church teaches there and have a more comprehensive view of what the church teaches. And oftentimes we've had such bad catechesis for so long that cradle Catholics may actually know less about what the church teaches than people who are coming into the faith, and also don't have they're like, oh, I'm already in it. I've been in this parish since I was a kid. I don't realize how much I don't know, and might not even be like actively thinking, how can I go learn more? Because they've just kind of, whatever I taught in second grade and like RCIA or not RCIA, whatever catechesis. That's everything there is to know. Like, they don't realize what they don't know, so they don't go trying to look for more. And they're not entering OCIA classes because they're like, oh, I grew up Catholic, I know everything, and they don't necessarily. So was that a challenge? And if so, like, what are some ways to deal with that?
Each community is unique, but I would say that each community is divided, in that kind of, framework, meaning you have people who and again, I mean this very respectfully, who are there, faithfully there, committed, but only go to a certain degree. Don't ask any more of them. They will be faithful to the Sunday Mass. They will support the parish community, but that's it. Then you might have another layer where it goes a little further, and so forth and so on. So you're preaching and teaching to a very diverse community.
Yeah.
And each one of within that community, and each of your different, on a parish level, each different group attending the masses that you are offering are also distinctively different.
Yeah.
And so these are things that trying to navigate those waters and trying to stir up the water, right? Not for the sake of stirring them up, in a sense to agitate, but there is a need to agitate, to help people to see that there's, as Mother Teresa would often say, that's never enough, all right? And love doesn't have a boundary, right? And truth does not have an expiration date. So we need to keep this momentum moving constantly, because complacency is the greatest enemy, right? And we have many people who are in that kind of realm, right? And I mean, and being in parish ministry, I mean, I encountered that, right? And it was a challenge, and you had to lovingly, patiently, but firmly have the resolve to weather it. That's why, and it's a different topic, of course, but I'm a firm believer in stability of the pastor and the priest. I'm not a big fan of moving people around frequently. And why? Because my experience, at least, has taught me stability is very important. To be the father of a family, you have to be present to your family. And we all know within the church that we know our priests are often moved, so forth, and for different reasons, right? But we should, my view, my opinion is it should be less frequent, because you need time, and you need that time to know them, to fall in love with them, to care about them, and to want to be loved by them as well, and to also receive their gifts in your life. It's not just me giving; it's receiving, and that's very, very important. And so, and that again, small base communities, faith communities also can teach that, because they're responsible for each other. They know each other, and and they care about each other, and very much like families do. You hurt my sibling, you hurt me. People feel that. That's the part we have to teach, and that's what helps the child in the womb become known and seen. Like Pope Francis talked about, the idea that many people see, but they don't see. They only look. See, there's a difference between look and see. Part of teaching and in informing a framework, back to that moral vision, back to that moral perspective, back to that understanding of human dignity, is teaching people to see, not just look. And you just articulated that when talking about that parish dynamic. There are many people in our faith communities that look. Good people, well-intended people, moral, doing good things, but all they do is look. Very little see. And so that's why the child in the womb becomes distant to them. That's why the woman in need becomes distant to them. So like the parable of the Good Samaritan, two people abandoned for whatever reason. One saw and then saw. Looked and then saw and acted. It's a challenge. So this is why, again, I started with. There's the diocesan structure, right? Looking at all the complexities, parish, community, small faith-based communities, and then moving forward. It's both and. It's a both and. So I'm a very strong believer in that framework, and this is what I try to teach, and I try to help, in different parts of the world to try to offer a way forward to build this kind of conversation. And that could be within a seminary. Same thing needs to happen, right? That can be within a parish community. It can be within a convent. It can be within a monastery. It can be within the home of a family. It's all of them.
Interesting. No, that's super helpful. Just kind of like think about it that way. As a last question, especially when you were involved in parish ministry, but maybe just in general from your mission field, what are like a couple of like the biggest challenges that you've seen when it comes to kind of cultivating a culture of life, and then what's a solution? And this can just be like a quick, like, this was a challenge, and then this was like a quick solution.
Well, you mentioned one major challenge was and not indifference in a sense of being sinful indifference.
Yeah.
It's just life is busy.
Yeah.
Life is messy, and people have a life, and it's full.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was always a challenge to kind of pull people out of the shell, out of their own little world, and to crack that egg, if you will, to expose them to something outside that shell.
Yeah.
Always has been a challenge, still remains a challenge.
Oh, I mean, I totally understand that. There's like the local parish that I go to will announce different talks and things on like a Wednesday night. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I'd love to go. And then life gets busy and I never end up going. So like even people who are completely well-intentioned who want to hear about those topics, like can get very busy and just not end up attending.
Right.
So,
and then I think the second challenge is that, which is a typical thing across the planet, small groups of people engaged. And the same question, where are the others? And for me, it's the scripture. Was not all 10 made whole?
Yeah.
Where are the other 9? It is a frustration. And I chose as a parish priest, and I still choose as a pro-life leader, not to fall into that trap. Because if you fall into the trap, then you become discouraged, disappointed. You become sometimes cynical, sarcastic. In other words, it's always the same people, and you're trying to get other people.
So the trap is just getting frustrated by that.
Where the other people are not there. And so and the sad thing is, sometimes you take it out on the people that are there, because you're going, well, where's Frank? Where's Bob? Where's Cindy? Where's this one? So you still got that challenge.
It's also hard for that group that always shows up, though, because they end up carrying the weight of the parish
because they
as
can
well.
fall into the same thing. And they become disenfranchised with what's happening, because they say, well, if it's not important to them, why should it be important to me? And that's what, of course, the devil gets in that mix. But that's a universal issue, by the way. It's not just a Western issue. It's a global issue. Human
nature issue, it sounds like.
Very much so. And the last thing I would toss out there is is really the issue of there's so much that needs to be done. And being overwhelmed by the complexity that needs to be done, and thinking, if I just start, what difference is that going to make?
Yeah.
Trying to challenge people to see that every act of love is like a million acts of love. I mean, it's a challenge, though. It's a challenge because people see the tsunami and think, what am I going to do against that?
Yeah,
will never change. It's back to this almost kind of cynicism. What can I do? I mean, what difference is it going to make? And I see that in a cross section of people within the body of Christ.
Yeah. Okay. One last question. I might have said that for the last one, but I'm saying one last question for this one. You had been saying that one thing that people can do is kind of start small groups where they study like materials about, like, educate themselves, or priests can say, hey, this year, can you study these? What are some encyclicals, writings, things that you would recommend to people that want to start and they don't even know where to start, that they could read with a small group, or a priest could encourage a small group to study? What are some things that you would suggest?
I mean, I have my favorites.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I'm going to start on the ones that are kind of new. And that is, for example, it's just studying the Wednesday audiences of the Holy Father. The various things that the Holy Father is talking about in his catechesis. It's a very beautiful way. It may relate, it may not relate, but it's a moment to really hear what the Holy Father is saying. And that is easy to do today. Very easy to pick up. Internet, it's usually a page or two at the most, something to be done. Again, recent writings of the Holy Fathers, and so that would be what I would say of people of recent memory. It depends how old we are. As I learned just from my own staff, I have been a priest going on 34 years, and most of my staff are not even 30 years old. So it just realizes how old I am. But the reality is just exposing oneself to the various documents. Right. And so, but in a sense of really wanting to learn and to deepen that, then yes, there are some landmark encyclicals, and one of them obviously is Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life. I believe reading the Apostolic Exhortation Familiaris Consortio would be very important to understand what John Paul was teaching and the church teaches in regard to our response to the family in the modern world. There are several, that are out there that are so important. Veritatis Splendor, the splendor of truth, very important document on what the church understands in the moral principles, the moral teaching, and our obligation to uphold those moral teachings. So those are just a few, but I mean, there's like that. And if people want to ask, I'd be more than happy to give a library to you if people are interested in the notes and they want to ask. I can give you a top 10, but it's important, for me is what are your interests? And that's what you go and look at. So, for example, today, the issue on human trafficking that, again, many of our people are not familiar with, right? There is a lot of writing on this.
Yeah.
The issue of surrogacy. Yes. Very important topic, again, connected to in vitro fertilization. The Holy Father himself just recently made comments about surrogacy, and he made comment about abortion. This just happened to the ambassadors of the Vatican to the world. Very powerful. I'm going to be writing on this pretty soon. Very, very important topic. And so he's hitting all these notes. So again, where your interests lie, and look at that, and then see what's being written about it, And so these are things that I would encourage.
Yeah.
So it's a starting point. And my last point on that would be this. You can do this in your own home. Now, again, you have to know your children, but you can do with other adults is, like I mentioned about the parish council or other leaders, pick a document. Yeah. And we're going to read, just 15 minutes. So, and then we'll have a little time to discuss. What did we hear in this? What did we learn from this? And then you just keep going through it. Yeah. You could do that with the catechism. It's another example. There's, the compendium on the doctrine of the social doctrine of the church, another good example. So many that you can give. I do this in the mission field. I give them, they get a library. They get a list of books and writings to do. So my main thing is don't be afraid to learn.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that was really helpful advice, because I was thinking about just how people can sometimes get overwhelmed. What is a decision paralysis? Because there's so many options and there's so many problems with the world. And especially if you have a parish where there's not really this kind of culture of life going on, getting started, trying to get that momentum going, it can just be where do we start? So that's where I was kind of hoping. And thank you for sharing some just documents and ideas for people that might kind of just, get those idea juices flowing, creative juices flowing. So,
exactly. The main thing is just we just need to see we all are part of this conversation. Yeah. Whether we think we are or not, we are part of it because Christ has called us into the vineyard. Go.
Well, and I'd like to see that list of mission field resources at some point. We can do podcasts on some of the documents. I know we've done that with Evangelium Vitae and Humanae Vitae and a couple. So absolutely, I like returning to encyclicals and just
we can put a big board up and I can start writing them down as we go along. But with technology, maybe we can do it online.
We'll publish, Father Boquet's suggested articles.
Yes. And if people read My Spirit and Life, they will get all the links to all of them.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation,
Thank
Father.
You, Colleen.
And to all of our audience, if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe and just keep on following the podcast for more information every week. And if you have any particular questions about trying to form pro-life culture at your parish, please leave them in the comments and we can try to address those in future episodes. And as always, keep on living the culture of life. God bless.